My name is Ash, and if you looked at my life from the outside, you would probably call it entirely ordinary. I live in a cramped, sunlit house on the edge of the city, with a family that loves me with a noisy, overwhelming intensity. My father works a demanding corporate job that wears him down to his bones, but no matter how late the train drops him off, he always walks through the front door with a greasy paper bag of sweet pastries tucked under his arm for me. My mother is the undisputed queen of our household, a woman who can turn a 20-minute lecture about my sloppy eating habits and general laziness into an art form, even while she piles a second helping of food onto my plate and feels my forehead to make sure I do not have a fever. Then there are my two older brothers, both in college, who treat me like a cross between a fragile heirloom and a younger sibling they are legally obligated to harass. They argue over who gets the TV remote, steal my socks, and would cheerfully throw hands with anyone who looked at me sideways. I had everything a person needed to be happy, including a best friend who felt more like a second shadow. Adrian comes from a world entirely different from mine. His father is the high-profile leader of a major political party, a man whose face appears on billboards across the city, promising progress and modern values. Their house is a gated mansion with marble floors and security guards. But Adrian never once made me feel the weight of his family's wealth. He refuses to be driven to school in a luxury car, opting instead to ride the cramped, squeaking public bus with me every morning. He wears modest, oversized hoodies, eats 5-cent candies, and invites me to his house to study, play video games, or simply lie on his rug listening to music. I had a good life, a wonderful life, really, except for one tiny, agonizing detail that kept me awake until 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling fan while my chest burned. I had been hopelessly, irrevocably in love with my best friend for over a year. For the longest time, we were just two inseparable boys. But slowly, imperceptibly, the boundaries of our normal friendship began to blur in my mind. Things that should have been trivial started sending my pulse into a tailspin. It started with small things. Adrian had a habit of taking my drinks right out of my hand. I would take a single sip of soda, and before I could even swallow, he would snatch the can, taking a deep gulp from the exact same spot. In the past, I would have yelled at him, shoved his shoulder, and called him a thief. But somewhere along the way, my brain stopped reacting with annoyance. Instead, my eyes would lock onto the straw or the lip of the can, watching his mouth press against the place mine had just touched. A sudden, suffocating heat would flood my cheeks, making me look down at my shoes so he wouldn't see. Then there was his habit of nagging me about my eating. I am a messy eater, I admit it. Whenever we bought cheap bakery cookies on our walk home, I would stuff my cheeks like a squirrel. Adrian would just laugh and call me a pig. He would lean in close and gently wipe a crumb off my lower lip with his thumb. And then, God help me, he would pop his thumb into his own mouth, licking it clean while murmuring about the absolute disaster I was. Before I would call him gross, but now, each time his skin brushed my lip, my throat would go completely dry, my chest tightening so hard it was almost painful. And the basketball games. Adrian was brilliant at sports, athletic and fluid in a way that drew eyes from every corner of the court. After a match, while the other guys were still shouting in the bleachers, he would walk straight toward me. He would be flushed, hot, glowing with sweat, his hair clinging to his forehead. He would sit so close our shoulders pressed together, hand me his damp towel and say in a sweet, playfully cunning voice, "Wipe it for me, Ash. I'm too tired to move." A year ago, I would have thrown the towel back into his face or rubbed his head so aggressively his skin would turn red. But lately, my hands would tremble. I would hold the soft cloth and trace the line of his jawline, carefully blotting the sweat from his neck, my eyes pinned to his lips, my heart hammering like a trapped bird against my ribs. To make matters worse, people confessed to Adrian constantly. He was intelligent, striking, and effortlessly charming. I couldn't blame the girls at school for lining up with pink envelopes. Usually, I would tease him mercilessly about his fan club. But lately, every confession felt like a physical blow. My stomach would drop into a cold, dark pit, and I would find myself asking him in a forced, casual tone if he was going to accept this time, desperately trying to hide the jealousy and terror threatening to choke me. Thankfully, he rejected every single one of them, offering polite, vague excuses before pulling me away by the elbow. All these ordinary bits of our daily banter had become a sweet, unbearable torture. And today was an absolute test of my self-restraint. The morning bus was packed tighter than usual. Passengers were shoved shoulder to shoulder. And when the bus slammed on its brakes around a sharp curve, the crowd lurched forward. Adrian braced himself over me to keep us from falling. Suddenly, his entire weight was leaning into my space. His arms were pinned against the metal wall on either side of my head, trapping me completely. His face was mere inches from mine. So close I could feel the rhythmic warmth of his breath against my skin. Our eyes locked. The roar of the bus engine and the noise of commuters faded into a dull background hum. For a terrifying, beautiful moment, it felt like something shifted between us, an unspoken gravity pulling us together. We stayed like that, frozen, until the crowd dissipated at the next stop, and we both quickly looked away, our necks burning. Later, as we walked down the high school hallway, Adrian suddenly dropped to one knee in front of me. He grabbed the dangling laces of my sneaker and began tying them into a neat bow, shaking his head. "You're so careless, Ash," he murmured softly from the floor. "What am I going to do with you?" I stared down at the top of his head, my throat tight, unable to utter a single word. After the final bell rang, things took a turn for the worse. Rose, the most beautiful girl in our grade, a girl with hundreds of thousands of followers online and a smile that looked like it belonged on a billboard, approached Adrian near the lockers. She blushed, her voice soft, and confessed her feelings right there in front of half the track team. Watching them stand together, I felt a heavy, suffocating ache spread through my chest. On our walk back to his house, we had planned to play a new video game that afternoon. I tried to play it cool. I kicked a pebble down the pavement and asked casually, "So, are you going to say yes to Rose?" Adrian didn't look at me. I told her no. I blinked, genuinely surprised. "Why? She's stunning. Half the guys in our school would literally sell a kidney to date her." Adrian stopped walking. He turned around, staring at me intently, his dark eyes searching my face with an intensity that made me pull back. "Would you?" he asked quietly. My heart skipped a beat. "What? Would you date her?" "No," I blurted out, shocked by the question. "She's not my type at all." "Because my type is exactly one person," I thought silently, the truth screaming in my head. "And he's standing right in front of me." Adrian's expression softened. A slow, subtle smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Good," he said softly, turning back to walk. "I already have my hands full with you. I don't have time to date anyone else." My brain completely short-circuited. What does he mean by that? The words looped in my head like a broken record all the way to his house. When we got to his room, we sat side by side on the carpet in front of the massive TV screen, controllers in hand. But I was useless. Every time our arms brushed against each other, a shock of electricity shot through my skin. I was far too conscious of his warmth, his scent, the tiny distance between us. Unsurprisingly, my character died within 3 minutes. Adrian burst out laughing. "You are absolute trash at this today, Ash," he teased, nudging me hard. "Shut up. The controller is drifting," I protested, but he didn't listen. He tackled me sideways onto the rug, his hands digging into my sides as he began tickling me mercilessly. "Take it back," he wheezed through his laughter, pressing down on me. "Admit I'm the master." "Never," I shrieked, writhing beneath him, clutching at his wrists. We wrestled across the floor until, suddenly, the movement stopped. Adrian was lying directly on top of me. His hands were pinned next to my shoulders, his chest rising and falling heavily against mine. The laughter died out of the air in a single heartbeat. I became hyper-aware of his weight, the warmth of his body, the way his eyes dropped down to my mouth and then back up to my eyes. The silence in the room grew heavy, charged with an intensity that made my hands shake. I couldn't control myself anymore. The year of longing, the yearning, the quiet jealousy. It all surged to the surface. I pushed myself up slightly, closed my eyes, and pressed my lips against his. It was a brief, desperate kiss. The moment my lips touched his, panic flooded my brain. What did I just do? Oh God. I ruined everything. I pulled back instantly, my mouth opening to blurt out a frantic apology, an excuse, anything to save our friendship. Before I could speak a single word, Adrian leaned down. He didn't pull away. He didn't look disgusted. He grabbed the back of my neck with one hand, his fingers tangling into my hair, and brought his lips down on mine in a kiss that was deep, passionate, and entirely unreserved. A soft gasp escaped my chest, and my hands instinctively clawed at his shoulders, pulling him closer. He kissed me like he had been starving for it, his thumb stroking my jawline, his breath hot against my face. And then, A sharp click echoed from the doorway. "Adrian?" A quiet, calm voice called out. It was his mother. I froze. Adrian was so caught up in the kiss that he didn't even hear her at first. Panic seized my chest. I forcefully pushed his shoulders back, pointing frantically toward the bedroom door. Adrian blinked, dazed, and turned his head. His mother stood in the doorway, her face unreadable, holding a tray of drinks. I didn't wait to hear what she had to say. Scrambling up from the carpet, my face burning like a furnace, I grabbed my backpack and practically sprinted out of the house, ignoring Adrian calling my name behind me. When I finally reached the safety of my own bedroom, I slammed the door, threw myself onto the mattress, and buried my face into a pillow. I screamed into the foam, my legs wiggling frantically, my cheeks so hot I thought they might melt. Adrian kissed me. He actually kissed me back. After 20 minutes of hyperventilating and grinning like an idiot, I pulled out my phone. I opened my chat with Adrian and typed frantically, "Hey, how did your mom react? Are you okay?" Even though I had never met his high-profile father in person, the man was constantly on television talking at length in his progressive speeches about inclusivity, open-mindedness, and modern family values. His mother had always been kind to me, serving us tea and snacks whenever I came over. I reasoned that it couldn't be a catastrophic issue. Sure, it was awkward, but they were modern people. Hours passed. Adrian didn't reply. My text remained undelivered. I tried calling him before going to sleep, but it went straight to voicemail. The next morning, I stood at our usual bus stop, checking my watch every 30 seconds. The bus arrived, screeched to a halt, and opened its doors. Adrian wasn't there. I assumed he had missed it, but when I walked into our classroom, his desk was entirely empty. He didn't show up the next day either, nor the day after that. By the third day of his absence, the joy inside me had completely rotted into a cold, suffocating anxiety. I couldn't focus on lessons. I couldn't eat the food my mother packed. The moment the final bell rang on Friday, I ran straight to his estate. I stood at the massive iron gates, pressing the intercom until the maid buzzed me in. I walked up the long stone driveway and knocked on the grand double doors. After a minute, his mother opened the grand door. She looked pristine, her hair styled neatly. She offered me a soft, tight smile. "Hello, Ash. Mrs. Vance." I panted, breathless. "Is Adrian here? He hasn't been answering his phone or coming to school. Is he okay?" "He's just feeling a bit ill, dear," she said smoothly. "Wait here. I'll let him know you're here." She walked up the grand staircase to the second floor, where Adrian's bedroom was located. A few minutes later, she descended the stairs, her expression grim. "I'm sorry, Ash. Adrian says he doesn't want to see anyone right now." My chest felt hollow. Did you tell him it was me, Ash?" She gave me a look filled with overwhelming pity. A look that chilled me to the bone. "I did, but he's quite unwell. He doesn't want you seeing him in this state." "Mrs. Vance, about what happened the other day." "The kiss?" I stammered, desperation rising in my throat. She cut me off gently, raising a hand. "You don't need to explain anything to me, Ash. We are a very modern, open-minded family. Don't worry about it. You should head home now." I walked back down his driveway in a fog of absolute confusion. Why was he avoiding me? The way he had held me, the passion in his kiss. It hadn't felt like a mistake or a moment of temporary madness. Felt real. I swore to myself that I would demand an answer the moment I saw him. I got my answer the very next morning, but it wasn't the one I wanted. I was standing near my locker when the hallway went quiet. I turned around and felt the air physically leave my lungs. Adrian was walking down the hall, and he was holding hands with Rose. They were walking close together, their fingers interwoven. Instantly, a crowd of students surrounded them, whistling and teasing. "Wait, are you guys actually together now?" someone yelled. "You look like a power couple." Rose flushed pink, leaning her head against Adrian's shoulder. And Adrian didn't correct them. He didn't pull his hand away. He just stood there with a cold, blank expression on his face, quietly accepting their congratulations. A wave of hot, blinding fury washed over my heartbreak. I marched straight through the crowd, grabbed Adrian by the wrist, and yanked him away from her. I dragged him down the corridor into an empty stairwell. The moment the heavy door shut behind us, he snatched his wrist out of my grip. "What are you doing, Ash?" he asked, his voice flat and distant. "What am I doing?" I shouted, my voice cracking down the middle. Adrian, what the hell is this? Are you dating Rose? He looked away, staring at the concrete wall. Yes, the word hit me like a physical punch. Tears stung the back of my eyes. Then what about me? I squeaked out, the anguish tearing through my throat. What about 3 days ago? What about that kiss? Adrian took a deep breath. His face was a mask of absolute indifference. Though his jaw was clenched so tight a muscle twitched. Ash. We should just stay friends, he said quietly. The kiss was a mistake. I got confused. A dry, bitter laugh escaped my lips. Tears spilled over my cheeks, hot and angry. Friends, I whispered, my voice trembling. We are not friends, Adrian. I don't kiss my friends. From this moment on, we are strangers. I turned on my heel to walk away. Ash, wait. Adrian reached out, his fingers brushing my wrist, his voice suddenly desperate. Don't touch me, I snapped, jerking my arm away with all the strength I had left. I pushed open the heavy door and walked out, leaving him alone in the stairwell. The days that followed were pure, unadulterated hell. I blocked his number. I blocked his social media. I tried my best to pretend he didn't exist, but high school makes erasure impossible. Every time I walked down the hall, I saw Rose hanging off his arm. Every time I opened my phone, someone had retweeted Rose's latest post. A candid picture of Adrian smiling faintly at a cafe, captioned, "My handsome boy." Every single visual was a fresh needle plunged straight into my heart. The breaking point came during Thursday's lunch. I entered the noisy cafeteria and immediately spotted them at a center table. Rose was leaning in, giggling as she reached up to pat Adrian's cheek, trying to feed him a piece of fruit. The sight brought back an agonizing memory of Adrian wiping cookie crumbs off my own lips with his thumb, looking at me like I was the only person in the room. My stomach churned so violently I thought I was going to throw up. I grabbed my lunch tray, turned around, and ran all the way up to the school rooftop. A quiet, deserted place where no one ever went. I sat down behind a large metal ventilation unit, tore open my sandwich, and began shoving food into my mouth, crying and cursing Adrian between every single bite. Stupid, arrogant, lying bastard. Using people. Pretending to care. I hope your next video game console explodes. When I got home that evening, I was a tragic mess. My 2 college brothers, who were visiting for the week, immediately noticed my swollen eyes and gloomy demeanor. They cornered me in the living room, wrapping me in a double bear hug and demanding to know who had dared to make their little brother cry. Give us a name, Ash, my eldest brother grunted, cracking his knuckles with a terrifying grin. We just want to have a friendly chat with him. In a dark alley. I couldn't help but laugh through my sadness. I told them the whole story, that I had fallen for a boy, kissed him, and been tossed aside for a pretty girl the very next day. I left out Adrian's name, knowing my brothers would literally break his legs if they found out it was the mayor's son. Seeing their fierce, protective love made the hollow ache in my chest feel a little more bearable. By Friday afternoon, I was back on the rooftop, eating another sandwich and aggressively whispering insults at the sky. Lying, two-faced, fake-smiling idiot. You really need to stop obsessing over him, you know? I flinched so hard I dropped my juice box. I whipped around. Sitting on an upside-down plastic crate hidden behind the shadow of the water tank was Ethan. Ethan was a legend at our school, the captain of the swim team, an athlete who competed at the national level and undeniably handsome. Because of his intense training schedule, the school gave him special privileges, meaning he rarely attended regular classes. What are you doing here? I demanded, quickly wiping my mouth. Ethan yawned, stretching his long, muscular arms over his head. This was my designated napping spot long before you showed up and started disturbing my peace with your tragic opera. I bristled immediately, throwing my shoulders back. Excuse me? This is public school property. I can eat my lunch wherever I want. Sure, Ethan replied smoothly, tilting his head. But I'd appreciate it if you took your sob story somewhere else. It's hard to sleep when someone is aggressively chewing a turkey sandwich and wishing death upon some guy named Adrian. My jaw dropped. How long have you been sitting there? Long enough to know the whole plot, he said, hopping down from the crate. He walked over, leaning against the railing. Look, kid, you should move on. This Adrian guy sounds like a total jerk. Hearing a stranger speak bad about Adrian made a strange, protective urge flare up inside me, even though I was the one cursing him a second ago. But I clamped my mouth shut. Ethan was right. Why are you eating alone up here anyway? Ethan asked, tossing an apple into the air and catching it. Don't you have other friends? I looked down at my shoes. No, I mumbled softly. Adrian was my only friend. I never felt the need to make anyone else. Now that we don't talk, it's just a bit lonely. Before Ethan could answer, the heavy metal door to the rooftop rattled. Ethan, I know you're up here, you lazy fish. Get down to the pool. The swim coach's booming voice echoed from the stairwell. Ethan's eyes widened in sheer terror. He looked at me, clapping his hands together in a desperate, silent pleading motion, pointing toward the space behind the ventilation unit. The door burst open. The coach stepped out, scanning the roof. His eyes landed on me. Hey, kid, have you seen Ethan up here? I looked at the coach. Then I looked out of the corner of my eye at Ethan, who was currently squished behind a metal pipe, staring at me with horror-filled eyes. I could have easily snitched. It would have served him right for calling my life a sob story. I took a deep breath. No, coach. I've been up here alone the whole time. I think I saw him heading toward the cafeteria earlier. The coach grunted in frustration. That boy is going to drive me to an early grave, he muttered, slamming the door shut as he left. Silence returned to the roof. Ethan slowly crept out from behind the pipe, letting out a massive sigh of relief. Man, you are a lifesaver. Why are you hiding from your own coach? I asked, frowning. You're the star swimmer. Ethan's playful smirk faded. He walked over to the edge of the roof, staring out at the city skyline. The lively, confident energy he usually carried seemed to deflate. Sometimes, it just gets to be too much, he said quietly, his voice heavy with a strange kind of exhaustion. Everyone's expectations. The school, the media, my parents. Swimming used to be the thing I loved most in the world. Now it just feels like a job I can't quit. I looked at his conflicted expression, recognizing the hidden weight he was carrying. In that moment, the arrogant athlete disappeared, leaving just a tired boy my age. After that day, the day we accidentally traded our secrets, the rooftop became our shared sanctuary. My daily lunch visits were no longer lonely. Ethan would show up, skip his practice, and sit on the concrete floor next to me while I ate. He told me that since I didn't have any friends left, he was officially filling the job vacancy. For the first time in weeks, I actually laughed at school. A few days later, we were sitting on the roof again. I was starving, stuffing a massive slice of pizza into my mouth. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. You eat like a stray cat, Ash, he teased, leaning over. He reached out his hand, his fingers gently brushing against the corner of my mouth to wipe away a smear of tomato sauce. Bang! The rooftop door slammed open so hard it rebounded off the brick wall. We both jumped. Standing in the doorway, panting heavily, was Adrian. His eyes were wild, dark, and dangerous. His gaze dropped immediately to Ethan's hand, which was still hovering near my face, and then snapped up to mine. The air on the roof instantly turned freezing cold. Ash, Adrian said, his voice deadly low, a storm brewing in his eyes. Who is he? I felt a surge of old bitterness rise in my chest. I stood up slowly, dusting off my pants. None of your business, I said coldly. Without looking back at Adrian, I grabbed Ethan by the hand. Come on, Ethan. Let's go. Ethan blinked, surprised by my sudden assertiveness, but he smiled and followed me. We brushed right past Adrian, whose face had darkened into a picture of pure agony and rage as he watched us leave. That evening, Ethan and I had planned to watch a movie at my house. He had suffered a brutal scolding from his coach earlier after a subpar time trial, followed by a cold phone call from his parents in the countryside who only cared about his medal count. He looked like he desperately needed a distraction, so I invited him over. We were walking down my residential street, chatting. Ethan, being his usual annoying self, wrapped an arm around my waist, tugging me sideways. How are you so skinny when you eat 3 portions of lunch every day? He teased, poking my stomach. Get off me, fish boy. I laughed, swatting at his arm. I was about to shove him away properly when I froze. Standing right under the street lamp near my house was Adrian. Our houses were only a few blocks apart, so seeing him in the neighborhood wasn't impossible, but he wasn't passing by. He was standing there, his hands shoved into his pockets, his posture tense. He looked like he had been waiting for hours. Get your hands off him, Adrian commanded. His voice was quiet, but it carried an authority that sent a chill down my spine. I felt a wave of anger. I reminded myself of all the self-respect speeches I had given myself in the mirror. Do not let him walk over you. Instead of pushing Ethan away, I grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled it firmer around my waist, staring straight into Adrian's eyes. And why should he listen to you? I challenged. Adrian flinched as if I had struck him. A look of deep, profound hurt crossed his face. Next to me, Ethan went completely rigid. I glanced up and realized Ethan's entire face had turned bright red. He was violently blushing at the sudden physical proximity, completely caught off guard. Ash, please, Adrian begged, his voice cracking. Can we please just talk? Alone? I looked at Ethan's red face, feeling a bit guilty for using him as a shield. Ethan, do you mind waiting for me down the street for a minute? I asked softly. Ethan nodded quickly, practically sprinting 10 yards down the road to give us space. Once he was out of earshot, I turned back to Adrian, my arms crossed, my tone sharp as glass. What is your problem, Adrian? What is my problem? Adrian echoed, stepping closer, his composure crumbling. How did you get so close to him? He's wiping your face, he's holding your waist. Ash, how can you let him touch you like that? Why do you care? I screamed, the built-up pain finally exploding out of me. He can touch me, he can hold my waist, he can kiss me if he wants to. You gave up any right to dictate my life the moment you walked into school holding Rose's hand. I will kill him before I let him kiss you, Adrian snarled, taking another violent step forward. And why would you do that? I yelled, tears springing to my eyes. You're dating Rose. You rejected me. You told me our kiss was a mistake. You don't want to be with me. But the moment I try to move on, you act like a crazy person. You are being cruel, Adrian. It's complicated, Ash. What is complicated? I sobbed, shoving his chest. Why can you date someone else? But I'm not allowed to move on. Why? Because I love you, Adrian roared. The street went dead silent. Before I could process the words, Adrian grabbed me by the shoulders, pulled me into his chest, and wrapped his arms around me in a grip so desperate it hurt. He buried his face into the crook of my neck. Within seconds, I felt hot, wet tears soaking through the fabric of my shirt. He was trembling violently. I stood there paralyzed. My brain screamed at me to push him off, to protect myself, but my heart was beating so hard it rattled my ribs. I love you, Ash, he sobbed into my neck, his hands clutching the back of my jacket. I love you so much it's killing me. Adrian, I whispered, confused, angry, and utterly heartbroken. Honk! A sleek gray luxury sedan pulled up to the curb right beside us. The back window rolled down smoothly. Adrian froze instantly. The color drained from his face, turning him ghost white. He pulled away from me so fast it was like he had been burned. Sitting in the back seat of the car was a distinguished man in a tailor-made suit. His hair was impeccably styled, his smile warm and charismatic. It was the face I had seen on 100 political posters across the city. Adrian's father. You must be Ash, Mr. Vance said, his voice smooth, echoing with the effortless charm that won him elections. Adrian has told me so much about you. It was the first time I had ever met his father face to face. Yes, sir. I managed to say, my throat dry. Hello. I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, Ash. Mr. Vance smiled warmly, though his eyes remained entirely cold, like a predator inspecting prey. But I'm going to have to borrow Adrian from you. Our family has an important dinner engagement tonight, and we are running late. Adrian, get in. Adrian didn't say a word. He didn't look at me. He silently opened the car door, slid into the leather interior, and stared straight ahead. The dark window rolled up, and the car glided away down the street, leaving me standing in the fading evening light with a storm raging in my head. 10 minutes later, Ethan and I were sitting on my bedroom floor. The movie was playing on my laptop, but I hadn't absorbed a single frame. Ash! Ash! I blinked, snapping out of my trance. Huh? Oh, sorry, Ethan. What did you say? Ethan leaned back against my bed, looking at me with a soft, sad expression. I've been calling your name for 2 minutes. It's about Adrian, isn't it? You still love him. I looked down at the carpet, biting my lip. We don't have to talk about it. Ethan reached over and paused the movie. Ash, I'm your friend. You can be honest with me. I swallowed hard. He confessed to me out there, Ethan. He told me he loves me. Ethan's eyes flickered with a brief flash of pain, but he hid it quickly behind a gentle nod. And you still have feelings for him. It wasn't a question. Hearing it stated so plainly stripped away all my defenses. Yes, I admitted softly, a tear dropping onto my knee. I do. Why? Ethan asked softly. He didn't sound angry or accusatory. He just sounded genuinely curious. After everything he did? After the way he hurt you? Because I know him, I whispered, looking up at Ethan. I've known him for years, Ethan. The boy who walked into school holding Rose's hand. The boy who cold-shouldered me. That isn't who Adrian is. I'm not just saying that because my heart is stupid. I know him. I have known him before I had feeling for him. I know he is not that person. I feel it in my gut. But I'm terrified that I might be wrong. What if it's just my heart making excuses for a guy who tossed me aside? Ethan looked at me for a long moment. Then he offered a small, encouraging smile. Trust your gut, Ash. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for. The next morning I couldn't rest. I stood near the school gates early, determined to force the truth out of Adrian. When he finally walked through the iron gates, my breath hitched in my throat. Adrian's face was bruised. A dark purple shadow covered his left cheekbone, and his lip was split. Even though he was wearing a long-sleeved blazer despite the warm weather, I could see dark, angry purple welts extending past his cuffs onto the back of his hands. Adrian, I cried out, stepping toward him. He didn't look at me. He pulled his hood up and brushed right past me, walking straight into the building. In the classroom, the atmosphere was chaotic. Adrian sat in the back corner, his head pressed against the cold glass of the window, completely motionless. Whispers filled the room. Did he get into a fight with college guys? Is he in a gang? Halfway through the morning, Rose strutted over to his desk. She didn't look at his bruises at all. Where have you been? She snapped, crossing her arms. I've been texting you for 2 days. My followers are asking if we broke up. Adrian. Adrian didn't even turn his head. He pulled his headphones over his ears, completely blocking her out. Annoyed, Rose huffed and walked away. A minute later, Adrian stood up and left the classroom through the back door. I immediately stood up and followed him down the quiet service hallway. Adrian, stop, I called out. He stopped, but he kept his back to me. Ash, you were right, he said, his voice flat, hollow. You should keep your distance from me, like before. So you're fine if I start dating someone else? I yelled, my voice ringing against the lockers. If that's what you want, he mumbled. I marched up to him, grabbing his shoulder and spinning him around to face me. Look at me, I demanded. His eyes were red, filled with a deep, crushing agony that tore my heart to shreds. He looked like he was dying inside with every word he spoke. Are you seriously telling me that the love you confessed to me 2 days ago just vanished into thin air? Ash, don't stand so close to me, he whispered, looking around frantically. Someone might see us. Are you ashamed of me? I yelled, tears streaming down my face. Are you ashamed of being seen with me? And oh, he shouted back, his fists clenching. Then what is it? I screamed back, stepping right into his chest. Tell me, Adrian. I'll understand. Whatever it is, I can handle it. What are you so afraid of? My father, Adrian roared. The shock of his shout reverberated down the empty hallway. Adrian collapsed backward against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor, dragging his hands down his face. His shoulders shook violently. If my father finds out, Adrian whispered, his voice broken into tiny pieces. From a teacher, from a student, from anyone, he will destroy you. He will make sure your father is fired from his job. He will ruin your family. He has the power to do it, Ash. He can destroy your whole life. I stood there, frozen in complete shock. Your father did those bruises to you? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Adrian looked up at me, his eyes wide with disbelief and tears spilling over his lashes. Ash, did you not hear what I just said? Being near me puts your family at risk. How can you possibly be worried about me right now? How could he do that to you? I sobbed. I dropped to my knees on the dirty concrete, throwing my arms around his neck, pulling his battered body tightly against mine, rubbing his back frantically. Adrian stiffened for a second, then completely broke. He buried his face into my shoulder, his arms locking around my waist with a crushing strength, weeping openly into my neck. Ash! He sobbed, clutching me as if I were his only lifeline in a storm. "Shoo!" I whispered, pressing my lips against his hair. "Tell me everything. From the very beginning." We went to the rooftop, and there, on the secluded school roof, Adrian finally poured out his hidden nightmare. His father was a monster. To the public, he was a progressive, inclusive, modern leader advocating for human rights. But behind the reinforced doors of his mansion, he was a tyrannical, conservative tyrant who demanded absolute obedience. His mother was a submissive wife who treated her husband like a king and expected Adrian to do the same. Adrian's life had been an endless cycle of perfectionism, fear, and silent abuse. "My home isn't a home, Ash," Adrian whispered, his voice trembling. "It's a prison. You were my only escape. You were the only real thing in my life." He admitted that he had been in love with me for years, probably since we were kids. But he knew his father would destroy us if he ever found out, and he believed I could never love him back. So he hid his feelings behind the mask of a best friend, constantly testing how close he could get without crossing the line. "When you kissed me in my room that day," Adrian choked out, "I lost my mind. I didn't care about my father. I was ready to fight him for you. I swear I was. But my mother called him the second you left." His father had returned home with 3 security guards. Adrian had been brutally beaten, his phone confiscated, and his contact list searched. His father deleted my number, threatened to send him abroad, away from everyone, from me, and forced Adrian into a fake relationship with Rose, an influencer whose wealthy political family could benefit his father's upcoming campaign. He told me if I didn't comply, he would send me to a military academy abroad, Adrian said, his voice hollow. I thought if I pretended to go along with it, if I dated Rose publicly, I could find a way out, a leverage I could use against him. But he checks my phone every night. He tracks my GPS. And then Ethan showed up. Adrian gripped my hands tightly, his tear-stained face pale. "When I saw you with Ethan on the roof, when I saw him wiping your face, I lost control. I thought I had lost you forever. Everything I was enduring was becoming meaningless because you were moving on. In the heat of the moment, I confessed to you outside your house, and my father saw us." His father had beaten him again that night, leaving the severe bruises beneath his jacket, and swore that if Adrian spoke to me one more time, my father would be blacklisted from every corporate firm in the city by morning. "I don't know what to do, Ash," Adrian sobbed, pressing his forehead against mine. "I love you so much that living without you is torture. I can bear his tortures directed towards me, but I can't let him harm you or your family. I can't let him ruin your life." I stared into his dark, agonizingly beautiful eyes. The anger that had consumed me for weeks vanished completely, replaced by a fierce, blazing flame of love and determination. I reached out, gently cupping his bruised face in my palms, careful not to press too hard. "You absolute moron," I whispered softly, a tear dropping from my chin onto his cheek. "You don't get to decide to suffer alone just to keep me safe. I'm already in this, Adrian. I've been in this since the day I fell in love with you. Ash, your father's job. My parents love me." I cut him off firmly. "If my father loses his job, he will find another one. He is a brilliant, capable man, and he would gladly work at a corner store before he let a corrupt politician blackmail his son. We are in this together. I am going to protect you, and we are going to protect my family." "How?" Adrian whispered, looking at me with a mix of awe and terror. "We need proof," a voice called out from behind the air conditioning unit. Ethan stepped out into the sunlight, leaning against the metal casing, his arms folded. He had been listening the entire time. "You really do live up here, don't you?" I muttered, wiping my eyes. "Hey, it's my spot." Ethan grinned faintly, though his eyes were sharp. He looked at Adrian, his playful demeanor replaced by a serious, focused intensity. "Your dad is a public figure. His entire life relies on his clean, progressive image. If you get concrete proof of his domestic abuse and blackmails, he won't dare touch Ash's family. It would destroy his career overnight." The 3 of us spent the next hour huddled on the roof, hammering out a plan. The strategy was risky, but it was our only shot. While Adrian's personal phone was monitored, he would sneak my phone into his house. "Do not let him hurt you badly, Adrian," I warned him fiercely, grabbing his lapels again. "If things get out of hand, drop it. We can find another way. I want you safe first. Look at you two, Nauseatingly sweet, Ethan groaned, rolling his eyes dramatically, though a soft smile touched his lips. That evening, before dinner was served at the grand estate, Adrian quietly slipped my phone into the dining room. He hid it behind a large, decorative ceramic vase on the sideboard, angling the camera lens perfectly toward the grand oak dining table, setting it to record. At 7 p.m., his father sat down at the head of the table. The meal began in cold silence. 10 minutes in, his father set his fork down, his sharp eyes fixing on Adrian. "Have you kept your distance from that lower-class boy, Adrian?" his father asked, his voice smooth and cold. "I trust you haven't been foolish enough to contact him again." Adrian sat up straight, looking his father dead in the eye. "What if I don't stop, Dad? What if I continue to see Ash?" His father's face hardened instantly. "Then I will destroy his father's company. I will ensure his family is dragged through the dirt until they are forced to leave the city." "Will you beat me again too?" Adrian asked, his voice steady, loud, and clear. "Like you did 3 days ago? Like you did on Tuesday?" His father slammed his hand onto the table, sending the crystal glasses rattling. He stood up, his face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little brat!" his father snarled, marching around the table. He grabbed Adrian by his collar, dragging him out of his chair, and slapped him violently across the face. The impact echoed loudly through the high-ceilinged room. "I built this family," his father roared, towering over him, his face inches from Adrian's. "You will obey me, or I will break you. You are nothing without my name. That disgusting little boy and his pathetic middle-class family are insects. I can erase them with a single phone call." Adrian's mother sat at the far end of the table, her head bowed, staring at her plate in absolute silence, doing nothing to stop it. His father shoved Adrian back into his chair, smoothed down his suit jacket, spat a final threat about his upcoming political rally, and strode out of the dining room. His mother scurried after him. As soon as the hallway was clear, Adrian stood up. He walked to the sideboard, pulled my phone from behind the vase, and stopped the recording. His hands were shaking, but his eyes were blazing with freedom. He immediately uploaded the high-definition video to a secure cloud drive and sent a backup copy to Ethan's phone, just in case. Then, he walked up to his parents' master bedroom. He pushed the doors open, standing on the threshold. His father looked up from his desk, furious. "What do you want now?" "I have everything on video," Adrian said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He held up his hand, showing the cloud transfer confirmation on the screen. "Every insult, every strike, every blackmail threat against Ash's family. It's already backed up on external servers." His father turned deadly pale, standing up so fast his leather chair fell backward. "What did you do? If you come near me, if you touch Ash, or if you even attempt to affect his father's job, these videos will be broadcast on every national news network before midnight," Adrian said coldly. "Try me." Without waiting for a response, Adrian turned around, walked down the grand marble staircase, threw his backpack over his shoulder, and walked out of the estate into the rainy night. At 9:30 p.m., my front doorbell rang. I tore open the door. Standing under the porch light, soaked in rain, holding a single backpack, was Adrian. He looked exhausted, bruised, but his eyes were shining bright. "I did it," he whispered, a faint smile touching his lips. "I have the proof. I left." A sob of relief burst from my throat. I lunged forward, wrapping my arms around him, pulling him into the warmth of our hallway. "You did so well. You did so well, Adrian." The noise brought my parents rushing out of the living room. My mother took one look at Adrian's damp clothes, bruised face, and trembling hands, and immediately went into full mother mode. She didn't ask questions. She rushed to the bathroom for the first aid kit, barking orders at my father to bring a dry towel and a bowl of hot soup. We sat my parents down in the living room, and Adrian, with a shaky voice, told them the full story. My father sat quietly, his face dark with suppressed anger, as he listened to the political corruption and threats against his job. When Adrian finished, apologizing profusely for dragging our family into his father's mess, my dad stood up, walked over, and placed a heavy, reassuring hand on Adrian's shoulder. "You have nothing to apologize for, son," my father said firmly. "You are safe here. You can stay in this house for as long as you need. And as for my job, don't you worry about that hard stuff. I am a capable man. If that corrupt politician tries anything, I'll finally have the excuse I need to start my own business like I've always wanted. We protect family in this house. Adrian stared at my father, his eyes welling with thick tears, nodding silently as he swallowed the lump in his throat. Later that night, Adrian was settled into my bedroom. My mother had laid out a spare mattress on the floor for him, though my two older brothers spent the entire evening taking turns standing in the doorway under various flimsy excuses. Asking to borrow a pen, checking if the light bulb was working, bringing extra blankets, just to keep a fiercely protective, brotherly eye on us. It was both hilarious and utterly maddening. Once the house finally fell quiet and the lights were turned off, I lay on my bed, staring down at Adrian, who was lying on the floor mattress beside me. "Hey!" I whispered into the dark. "Hey!" he replied softly, turning his head to look up at me. "You're still technically in a relationship with Rose, you know?" I teased gently, crossing my arms over my chest. "What about her? Isn't her heart going to be broken?" Adrian snorted softly into his pillow. "Rose was never interested in me, Ash. She was interested in dating the party leader's son to gain followers and clout. Everything she does is for the camera. Trust me, if I break up with her, she'll be far more devastated about her social media engagement dropping than about losing me." "Still," I grumbled playfully, pulling my blanket up to my chin, "I have my standards. I am not sleeping in the same bed as a guy who officially has a girlfriend. You stay on the floor." Adrian let out a soft, genuine laugh. The first real laugh I had heard from him in over a month. Fair enough. We didn't sleep a wink that night. We stayed awake until dawn, whispering in the dark, talking about the nightmare of the past month, reminiscing about our childhood, and planning for a future where we didn't have to hide. The next morning at school, Adrian walked straight up to Rose's desk before homeroom started. I stood near the doorway watching alongside Ethan. Adrian kept his voice clear and polite. "Rose, we need to end this. We're breaking up." Rose gasped, dropping her phone onto her desk. Her eyes went wide, not with heartbreak, but with sheer horror as she checked her surroundings. "Are you serious?" she hissed in a furious whisper. "Right before the midterms. What are my followers going to think? How am I supposed to frame this on my story?" Covered my mouth with my hand. Beside me, Ethan smirked, nudging my shoulder. "See? Told you." Later that afternoon, I found Ethan sitting by the edge of the school swimming pool, staring at his reflection in the blue water. "I talked to the coach today," Ethan said as I sat down next to him, dangling my legs over the water. "I'm taking a break from competitive swimming." I looked at him in surprise. "Are you sure? You love swimming, Ethan." "I love the water," Ethan corrected softly, looking up at me with a light, peaceful smile. "I just hate the pressure. I'm stepping down from the national team for a while. I'm just going to swim for fun." He paused, letting out a dramatic groan as he leaned back against the tile floor. "The worst part is, the coach accepted it, which means I actually have to attend regular classes now. No more sleeping on the roof during math. Serves you right, slacker." I laughed. The final months of high school flew by in a blur of intense studying and domestic warmth. Adrian officially moved into our house, sleeping in the spare room next to my brothers. My father helped him navigate the legalities of separating his finances from his father's estate, while my mother treated him like her third son, constantly complaining about his food portions while piling his plate high with food. My older brothers eventually accepted Adrian into the fold, though they maintained a hilarious, overly vigilant guard dog protocol whenever Adrian and I were alone in a room together for more than 10 minutes. When college acceptance letters finally arrived, Adrian and I opened ours together at the dining table. We had both been accepted into the same prestigious university abroad, a dream I had carried for years, and a fresh start that Adrian desperately needed. On the morning of our flight, as we sat in the bustling international airport terminal waiting for our boarding call, Adrian pulled out his laptop. He looked at me, a calm, resolute smile on his face. "Ready?" I reached out, wrapping my fingers tightly around his. "Ready." With a single click, Adrian released the encrypted video file to every major news outlet and social media platform in the country. Adrian had talked about this with my parents before, who supported this decision fully. We turned off our phones, boarded the plane, and took our seats side by side as the jet lifted off the tarmac, soaring into the bright blue sky. By the time our plane touched down in our new city hours later, the news had exploded globally. The video of the corrupt politician abusing his son and making illegal threats had gone viral, amassing millions of views. The public outcry was swift and devastating. His political party forced his immediate resignation, and an international investigation was launched into his financial dealings. But as Adrian and I stepped out of the foreign airport into the cool afternoon breeze, none of that mattered anymore. The noise of the past was thousands of miles behind us. Adrian stopped on the sidewalk, pulling his luggage behind him. He turned to face me, his dark eyes shining with an absolute, unshakable warmth. He reached out, his long fingers gently catching my hand, intertwining his fingers with mine in broad daylight, right there in the middle of the crowded street. He leaned down, pressing his lips softly, tenderly against mine. A kiss that tasted of freedom, relief, and a promise that would last a lifetime. "I love you, Ash," he whispered against my lips. I smiled, pulling him closer by his jacket. "I love you too, Adrian. Always have."